Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mad School's Strategy Bootcamp Open House. We have three fantastic speakers. Victoria, one of our graduates, is going to start it out. Then after her, one of our instructors, Alejandro, will speak. And then Kelly, one of the graduates.
It's really a great mix of understanding people and human behavior and just a lot of curiosity, but you still get to be really creative and use your writing skills a lot. We do a lot of writing.
Creators are bringing ideas, innovation, new things, like a surprise. We planners, we are the ones responsible for bringing back the human side to the advertising world. So we need to bring the clients, the consumers, the people out there that will buy our product. And in doing that, we need to also bring our minds and our heart and our gut, right, to what is a strategy. A strategy is not just 2 + 2, right? It's not following a rule or process or just math. You need to bring your ideas, your heart, everything that it is make you unique is what make your planning unique.
If you're someone who loves the intersection of psychology, culture, human behavior, all of those things, that's what you get in a strategy role. And that's what Miami Ad School will help you do. And I think my biggest takeaway from this program was it will teach you that strategy is not about reinventing the wheel or inventing something out of nothing, but rather it's about taking something that everyone else in the world sees, but viewing it in a way that has yet to be explored. And I think the best part of that is every day it's a new challenge and things never get boring. And in fact, one of the challenges that I'm going to be working on later today is we're going to be brainstorming for a Super Bowl pitch, which is super exciting. And I'm 23. I would have never imagined at this point in my life that I would even be at an agency. I am currently an associate strategist at David Miami, and I work on the Budweiser, Burger King, Sour Patch Kids, Bud Zero, and Activia accounts. So I'm definitely working on tons of different categories, and it's a lot of fun. But before I started this, basically what happened was I graduated from college in December 2019. And I was like, I want to work for the airline industry because I always had a passion for travel. So I was literally at the final interview process for an airline industry job and the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? What am I going to do? And I had heard about Miami Ad School. I heard about how intensive and amazing this program was. And I was like, you know what? Let me find out more. So I remember I reached out to the admissions program and I asked them all about it. And strategy really seemed like something I'd be fascinated with because I had always been someone who loved different perspectives, learning about cultures and all of that. And this career seemed like one that I could truly be at the pulse of culture. And strategy just seemed like a perfect fit between business and creative work, which was something that I never thought I could get paid to do. So I ended up applying to Miami Ad School. And from the very beginning, I knew this program was amazing. It literally covers all the fundamentals that I use in my everyday job. And even when I'm collaborating with clients.
So I actually was studying psychology in college, and I was just really fascinated by all the social psychology studies and the brain and how things worked and how we learn and a lot of the subconscious things that we kind of do and all have in common. And I'm always curious about understanding people's behavior. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, but I was taking some marketing classes as well to kind of round out what I was studying. And I was doing a class. It was kind of similar to what we do in the pitch class at Miami Ad School, where we're given kind of a brief and a product that we need to create a marketing plan for. So it was a little bit different. And we all kind of took on different roles. And what I found myself most interested in was thinking about the target and how would we appeal to them and what motivated them. And so I kind of thought, well, is this a job that I could do, and what is this thing? So I knew that my uncle used to work as an art director in agencies, and so I called him and I was like, what is advertising all about, and what kind of a job do you think that I could do there, and what's the difference between that and marketing? And he was super helpful and knows me well, so he said, you know what, I think you'd really like this job called account planning.
I was a creative in Argentina, right? Like I was working in a creative department, and I worked in different agencies, different levels. I started as junior, and then I became art director, and then senior art director, creative director, and everything going in that way, right? And then I have the opportunity to move abroad Argentina, and I moved to Brazil. And I was looking for a different challenge in my career. I was kind of a little tired of this creative department and the creative challenge and the creative mindset in a way, right? Like and the pressure and everything that it's happened in the creative department. So I have the opportunity to join consultancy company, and that opened for me a door for a completely new work, right? Like I start to work closer to brand and to positioning brands and positioning new products and launching new products, develop products for brands like Coca-Cola, right? Like that was an amazing experience. And the difference that I experienced there, it was like a time was another thing, completely different, right? Like when you work in consultancy company, you have a project for a year, right? Like it's not a month, 2 months to develop a campaign. So I have the time by doing the positioning and learning from the brands. I have all the time to do that, to absorb that. So that helped me to come back to the advertising world again. And I work at Ogilvy in Brazil. And then I moved to a different agency, and an agency that was part of the Publicis group, which is the same group that I am working right now, right? And that allows me to move to the US. So that's a little bit of how my career was moving organically, right? Like, and as you can see, right? Like, Vicky was mentioning a couple of times, and Deepa already mentioned as well, right? Like, what is Miami at School? What is the greatest thing about Miami at School is you learn by doing, right? And that I can tell you, that's amazing, because that's what I did, right? When I moved to Brazil, I didn't speak Portuguese, right? I have to learn to speak Portuguese living there. So imagine my first presentations working in Brazil without knowing the Portuguese. So anyway, you need to learn by doing. It's the only way to learn. I always say on my classes, right? Like all the content that I can share with you, the content is out there. You can find it, Google it, right? It's there. You can buy a book. That doesn't mean anything if you don't have the experience to work with a real client, right? And the experience to hear people talking about that process, because planning is a process, right? And it's an organic human process. And you will learn by doing in the Miami at School. You will learn to develop your own POV. That's the most important thing that a planner can have, is your perspective. You are human beings. You are bringing something to the advertising world.
You will learn by doing, which in my mind is like truly the best way to learn, because strategy, as Pippa mentioned, it's truly a very niche career. And it's something that it's really hard to find a place to learn the foundations of that. And that's really where Miami Ad School steps in. They walk you through all these different, each weekend you have a new industry hero who's very effective in a particular skill within strategy. And they teach you all of the tools that they have in their tool belt. And like I said, this is stuff that I use in my everyday career. But I think what's the best part is you literally work on client briefs. That is what I do on my day-to-day job. I'm given an ask from a client, and now I need to think of what's the most interesting angle into this ask that can drive really disruptive and effective work. And at Miami Ad School, they pair you with a creative team, and you get to work on a client brief, and the timelines are literally how they are at agencies. You do not have a lot of time to work on things. You just have to put all your brains together and really think about, how are we going to answer what the client wants and do it in a way that's never been done before? And I think, like I said, since you are partnered with creative teams, I'll tell you this, walking into an agency on day one, Your job is truly to help inspire creative work. And Miami Ad School truly set the foundation in strategy for me, but also cultivating those relationships with the creative teams, which is extremely important because it's a very collaborative process. It's a very collaborative career. And the fact that you hit the ground running and you're working on something that you are literally going to use in a practical way in real life was truly one of the most amazing things that the program had taught me beyond all the skills. But I think what's also so amazing is when you leave this program, you have all these tools, you have this huge network of people truly across the entire world, but you have an amazing portfolio that literally captures all the work that you put in, and you can now use to show the world, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the strategy I know how to build. And believe me, that opens doors. So what happened was I was doing a portfolio review after I graduated from Miami Ad School, and David happened to be one of the agencies on my list. I did not know they were looking for an intern. I knew David was a super small agency, and I was like, well, I just want to hear what they have to say about my work. And I wasn't expecting much of it, but because of the work that I had showed them, they ended up, by the end of the call, offering me an internship. And I was like, you know what, this could be really awesome. And I did not expect it at all, but they said that my portfolio literally looked like one that someone would have had over a collection of 10 years of work and experience. And I was like, I did a boot camp for 3 months and I was able to learn so much of how it truly is in the real world that I was able to put my best foot forward. And after a few years of, a few months of interning, I ended up getting full-time hired at David. But like I said, from day one, all of the skills and all of the network and all of that truly was what opened the door for me to start my career. And words cannot describe how much I thank Miami Ad School for truly like setting the foundation that has changed my life and has set the path for my career. And I really couldn't imagine being where I am today without this amazing school and this amazing program. All the tools they teach you about, all the mental critical thinking that you have to do, that's what strategy is all about. And it's so exciting. You are literally the voice of the consumer. And that's your job at the agency. You know, the account people are like the voice of the client. The creatives are the ones who do all the crazy, cool stuff. But you truly are the ones who have to sit and think, what is relevant? What do people care about? And without that step of being in such an intensive, immersive program, I wouldn't have been able to be where I am today. So I'm extremely thankful to Miami Ad School for that. And I think what this program will give you is you will be able to walk into interviews and walk into wherever you end up working. And on day one, you will have that confidence of like, I have the skills. I learned by doing, and now it's a matter of just taking all that I've learned and making the most of it and putting my best foot forward. And I think to be able to walk into such a niche career with that confidence, it's such an empowering thing. And like Pippa mentioned at the beginning, the network that you're able to build at a school like this, it doesn't just limit to the United States. You truly have doors opening everywhere. Other alumni have connected with me and I've connected with them. And just the ability of knowing how small this industry is and having friends in all corners of it, there's just so many benefits to the program. And I think that if anyone is interested in a career that is at the pulse of what's going on in the world, and if you're fascinated in human behavior and the way brands come in and impact society and the world and how they like to show up in culture, strategy truly is the intersection of business and creative. And I think for me, it's like a dream career that I never knew existed until I came here. So I am just gushing with excitement. And I hope that all of you, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But that's a little bit about my experience and where I'm at today, thanks to doing this amazing program that truly was like this stepping stone into the rest of my life.
Just be around all these amazing creatives as well. That was part of the experience that made it really exciting, was to be able to work with all the copywriter and art directors. So the ones in the pitch class where we kind of work every week on a new brief were in just finishing up their first year or beginning their second year, and they're all just super creative and bright and really motivated to work hard. So getting to work closely with them and start to develop that relationship, as well as just learn like how an agency works and what is the process like. Those are things that I just had no clue about before coming in. I had some people in my cohort that had worked in agencies as like an account person or some other type of role, so they were a little more familiar than me, but some of us had no idea either, and I think it was a great mix for anyone at any ability level there. To get that time just networking on my own, I really wouldn't have been able to do. They were really dedicated and they really pushed us to do things that we would kind of go, I don't know how to do this at first, but they were so super supportive and they knew that we could handle it. And that's, like everyone has said, is just really good preparation for agency life, because a lot of times you don't know how to approach the problem, and so they give you those tools to understand, where do I start and how do I figure this out, and then you end up being really proud of yourself once you get there. What else about my experience? I just really loved the instructors that I had and the different classes that we had each week. I just felt like it gave me a great window into what my job would be. And when I was finishing up and putting together my portfolio, that was really helpful, not only in the agency visits that you do with Miami Ad School at the end, but if I was going to continue networking outside of that, it was something I could bring along, and it added some legitimacy for me of, hey, I've done this work, I have good ideas, you can see them right here that I've worked on with people. And it just gave us more talking points to get to those interesting conversations. Because I think what I've learned in now interviewing people myself, we just want to work with people who are not only smart and they have good ideas, but they're really interesting, and you want to have big conversation with them and learn from them. That's a lot of what strategy is about, is just learning all the time. I remember one that I really loved, which was about briefing creatively. And so it was kind of more, we were getting into, it was maybe the third week, where we were still kind of learning, like, what is a brief and what is an insight and how do we do this and how do we work with the creative teams. And he kind of talked about taking that to the next level, which was to make the brief about more than just what's on the piece of paper and really get the team to feel the mindset of what you're trying to communicate in the brief. And I thought that was just amazing and something that I've tried to bring into what I do now, but that one really always stuck with me.
During my class, we cover, the whole process, because the idea is to own the process. So the idea is to cover from the beginning to the end everything that a planner should touch. And I think also one of the things that we talk during the class is the role of a planner and advertising agent has changed so much. And I remember even when I started to work as a planner, right? You were just the guy who received an assignment from the account. Maybe you meet them, you meet your client, and then you do some research, you find the data, and then brief the creative. And pretty much that's done. And that is no longer the reality, guys. I mean, I see planning as the glue that keep all the work at the agency together. And we go to the clients, we work with accounts, we work with media, we grow the social departments, of course we work with creatives all together, but also even that we need to talk with production, because sometimes the casting for a spot is not accurate, it's not representing the target that we know better than anyone else at the agency. So we need to take a look at the spot, the scripts, how they are portraying, the little Easter eggs that we can add so the spot feels more real to the people who will be watching it. So I think that we planners need to navigate the whole advertising process at the agency, and we need to be able to talk with anyone at the agency, right? With all the departments, and that means to know a little bit how all the departments works and what we are talking with each of them. So we, in my class, we cover a lot of a long process, right? Like that's when we receive the assignment from the clients and when we enter the production and we measure the success of the campaign and all that is related to that. But from a perspective, not just going to the details of what that process means, but how you make it in your own way, right? Like you all guys have different personalities, different passions, different hobbies, different things that you love to do, and all those stuff are welcome in the planning team, right? Different for other departments at the agency. Here is where, if you are an amazing photographer, your decks should be amazing. If you work as myself, like I work in a creative department before, my biggest skill is to connect with the creative department and understand what they need and know why they were asked before they ask, and try to bring solutions and answers to them. So everyone has a different skill that planning can take advantage of. So we need to develop that and make that your credential, your presentation. That skill that you do better than anyone else is what we're trying to uncover during this bootcamp. And finally, once you go to the interviews, you will find, okay, this is how I present myself. Because I think that we planners, we work a lot with brands and we talk about positioning and what is the role of the brand in people's life. But usually we don't think about that for ourselves. And that's the first mistake, right? Like we need to think ourselves as a brand. You want to convince someone that you are the best person to do the job. So how you will sell yourself, right? Like how you position yourself, who you are. And then is that making that analysis, right? Like finding your strength and work on that. So that's kind of a little bit of owning your own process. Don't think that because you like something, you should develop work for that category in a way. You know, like it's quite the opposite.
Yes.
I agree with that. I think, I work on Honda. I knew pretty much nothing about cars before being on this client. And so the same thing for my boss. He kind of came in not really caring about cars. And then we have some people who are super into it. So what we bring, I think that's different is kind of like a little bit of healthy skepticism to like, okay, is this really how the average shopper is thinking about it? As opposed to someone who's so into cars and thinks about it a little bit differently. I also work on farmers insurance, didn't really know much about insurance, and you never know when your knowledge about something else is going to really, like that piece of culture is going to be important in understanding the target or some kind of creative strategy. So I think I echo what Alejandro said totally.
Usually when you're working in an agency, it sometimes you're just working on one client, especially when you get to a really high level, but oftentimes you have 3 or 4 different clients that you're working on, and they're usually very different from each other. And it's really nice because you can take the learning from an insurance company and add it to a fast food company or a children's fashion brand, or I don't know.
Yeah, let me add something there. Like for example, I remember when I started to work in Brazil, a lot of people working with me say, "Man, why you pay attention to that?" Right? Like it was kind of normal behavior of people, and it's because I am Argentine, I'm not Brazilian. So everything that I saw in the Brazilian people grabbed my attention. It's different, right? Like a different culture, different, and that's how you need to train your mind to, remove the bias and look at the reality with pure eyes and try to, absorb. It's kind of sound easy, but it's not, because that's a little bit of what we talk also in the class.
But there are a wide variety of classes and different kinds of research and how to understand the issues that a brand faces. And so you're learning, you start at the beginning and then you go through every aspect that's needed to take a client's project from beginning to end. It starts with a client brief, and the client does a check-in with you midway through to see how the thinking is going and collaborate with you. And then you start working with a creative team where you're sharing your strategy with them, and they're starting to develop, creative ideas and executions off of your strategy and how well you inspired them to work on this project. And then the program culminates in a pitch where you and your creative team pitch to the client. And they pick a winning team. They often actually execute the work or parts of the work. So in this next boot camp, I can say that the brand is a perfume company that has come to us, and they want to do this big launch and have asked us to do it for them. So.
There's a couple questions in the chat that we can get to, and then I see Celia has her hand. How has the industry changed over the pandemic? Alejandro, I don't know if you have anything first.
Yeah, I can say something about that. I mean, I read that question. I was thinking, interesting, and I think that the industry has changed similar to past. Everything changed because advertising is an industry that's trying to mimic reality, right? Like we need to mimic reality. We need to mirror reality because that's a little bit of our work. And I think what I saw, at least from a personal point of view, it's there is a big movement that happened at the beginning of the pandemic, right? Like a lot of people living in cities and working remotely and moving around the country, right? Like I think I found that super interesting. And now I see a lot of opportunities popping up, like a lot of people that maybe move in that situation and start work remotely, but then with the year passing by, like they leave their work and start to do something different. So starting this year, I think I saw an increase of searching for new people and trying to bring new talent and adding more people to the industry. So I think and also the industry has changed in before the pandemic, right? Like with all these companies, techie companies, the tech companies, the Facebook, Google, like Netflix, all those places are good places for a planner as well. So you don't need to limit yourself to the advertising agency world.
And then Charles wants to know what aspect of strategy you would find the most interesting. I think for me, I love that there's just always a new challenge. Like there's not just creative briefs are not the only thing we do. There's so many more interesting strategic challenges. Whether it's doing like what I'm doing right now is kind of a long-term research project where we've been following people for 6 to 8 months in their shopping process, so we can kind of learn differently as opposed to just looking back at what they think that they remember they did. Sometimes it's understanding how an advertising character is perceived in over time, like a long-term character, like insurance. Sometimes it's just other questions that come from the client that I think have an interesting difference from just writing the creative brief. So it's really about like learning all the time and being kind of the voice of reason in the room. So I really enjoy kind of the collaboration and just the interesting thinking that we do all the time.
Good, that was great.
What about you, Alejandro?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know if it's the most interesting portion, but at least it's one of the aspects that I really enjoy the most is talking with people, connecting with people and learning from them. kind of trying to figure it out how behind each story that we connect, listen to people, and how we can translate that into a brand story, right? Like, so you guys are the ones that will be bringing people to the brands, connecting those dots, right? And I found that super interesting and inspiring, right? Because it's not just selling the product to people, it's quite the opposite. It's selling the people to the brands, it's kind of making that connection, what people need, and make the brands learn that and understand that and make a product for them. So I found that kind of navigate through that equation through connect with people and do research, ethnographic and one-on-one interviews and learn from that. I found super interesting.